Hello, hello. Hi, guys. Welcome to Jacqueline Valdez Live. I'm so excited to be here today. So, today we are going to be talking about how to share, you're going to share how to scale your business intuitively. And let's welcome our guest, Sabrina Guler. Hello, hello.
Hey everyone. After some technical malfunction, we are here.
Woo, right? We made it. We made it. So, welcome. How's your day going so far?
It is great. I am here in Phoenix and we are finally getting some good weather. And yeah, it's been hot, but it's finally I feel like there's seasons. There's finally a speck of seasons here.
I love it. I love seasons. I'm originally from Colorado, and that's one thing I miss is the seasons. But now I'm in Florida. Now it's nice and sunny, but getting a little cool.
Love
Yeah.
it.
So tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I like to say I'm an entrepreneur first. But I love to say that I've mastered the art of like transformation, identity creation, and like really reinventing myself. I think business has always come naturally through just being able to feel comfortable around taking risks and being okay with failing. And so, yeah, so I'm an entrepreneur. I started my first business about 4 years ago. I
Nice.
used to I used to be in corporate. So I worked for Apple. I worked on products like AirPods for a couple of years.
Wow.
And I had this like really big feeling in me that was kind of brewing, like I was meant to do something a little more creative, a little bit on my own terms. And I think a lot of people caught that bug during COVID. And so I made that my first jump into the business world. And yeah, I had no intentions of growing my business to the size that it is today. Today we have scaled our business to be roughly around $85 million in capital raised, and that was my first run, which on honestly, like, it still kind of shocks me. I'm very grateful for the whole experience. And then recently, with my journey of scaling my business to that size, raising capital, running a business with, 8-figure revenue year round, I realized how much I have changed as a person. I think a lot of people think that business, specifically being an entrepreneur, is separate from their own personal growth and transformation. And I am a core believer, alongside my program that I just started, into the Intuitive CEO, that it
Right.
is very much so the same. And so, how you grow as a person, how much you are open to receiving and, allowing yourself to transform, equally shows up in your business.
I love that. I love that you touched on receiving. Today, it's been a word of receiving all around me with different conversations that I've had today. So that's something that's very cool. And just finding that authentic self. How did you rebrand yourself and really stay true to your identity and listening to your intuition?
That's such a good question, because I find that when you are, I think a lot of people assume that when you want to create a new identity, the scary part is making the jump. But I actually think the scary part is like the messy middle,
Yeah,
where you don't know who you are and you're kind of like waiting for that new thing to come in and
right.
like validate your the openness that you have as a person, right? And so, like, when I left my corporate job, I think a lot of people want the confirmation in the physical world to show up and be like, okay, you're going to run this business, it's going to make 7 figures a year, you're going to know exactly who you are. But
Right.
that was anything but what had happened to me, to be honest with you. I think I had, and I talk about this a lot, because I feel like when you claim what it is that you want and you have that conviction within yourself, nobody needs to have it other than you you create this space where, and I call the space of the unknown, right? Where you're like, okay, this is really scary, I don't know how to fill this gap yet. But to be honest with you, that gap, you can be looked in two different ways. It can be looked as, this is scary and this is the unknown, and I don't know how to fill this time and I need answers. So I'm going to go and rush things and force things and try to be all these things that I'm not, or potentially even sabotage. I think a lot of people sabotage during that time because they don't know who they're becoming. And so they just go back to old patterns.
That's true. That's so true. How do you overcome that fear? What tips would you give someone to keep pushing through?
You know, my answer is not sexy. So it's not a sexy answer, and it's an answer that we've all heard in some shape or form. But I think if you can master the sitting in the silence of that, I
Yeah,
think, and you know what I was just about to turn the leaf on before was, you can either look at it from that gap, or you can look at it as, okay, how am I going to take this space that I'm in that feels so uncomfortable, that feels so unknown? How am I going to take this space, and how can I create myself today? What can I do today in a very small step of action, contribute to my new identity, the thing that I want to become? Because the thing is, Jacqueline, when you're in that space, like I mentioned before, it's so
right.
funny how like old things come back in. You have like old relationships that come in, old triggers that come in. You get invited to things by old group of friends, and you have this, you have to make this choice. Do I want to go back to who I was, which was very uncomfortable for me, or something that I don't associate with anymore?
Right.
Or am I going to take the action today, like to go to the gym, or to start that new project, or to potentially draft an episode of a podcast that you're creating, right? Like,
Yeah.
what can you do today, even if it's not perfect, to contribute to your new identity? And the thing is, like, when we are creating our new identity, it
Right.
is not like you jump from corporate person to seven-figure entrepreneur. There's mastery there, and there are many skills and many things that you don't have yet to go from this thing overnight, right? And so whether people support you publicly, whether you're receiving the gratification from other people's validation, none of that really matters, because you have to go and walk that path, right? You have to take those skills. And so, anyway, just to kind of go back to what you're saying, it's doing the little steps every day that contribute to this overarching change.
Woo, I love it. You're dropping so many gems. It's so true, though. I feel like the universe does do a test to you. So, like you said, it'll throw things in to see if you want to really go down that path, or if you want to take a pivot, or if you want to go to your old patterns, or if you're not really ready for it. And it's so important, like you said, to also not worry so much about how many people are liking and following your post, and how many people are, jumping in right away, because people are always watching. You just never really know it. And you do have to follow that path and create that journey and be patient with yourself.
Yeah, a really good example is, I'm coming from the private equity world. That was my first business. And my new world is more, I mean, I'm still in entrepreneurship and business, but I
Right.
kind of have a twist on it now, right? Like now I'm doing stuff that's more in the spiritual world. And it's interesting because when I first took the jump in, obviously those two worlds don't really mix. Like you
Mhm.
don't see those two worlds collide. So the confirmation that I was looking for at first, when I first jumped into this, I was like, oh my God, like who's going to support me in this? I don't even have an audience in this, right? And it's so interesting because instead of looking for all the confirmation that I needed from whomever world that I was in prior to,
Right.
I had to look for that in myself, right? I had to be my own cheerleader, being like, okay, well, if no one's here to support this venture, like, am I here to support this venture for myself? And when you claim that, when you step in your own truth and you are unapologetically who you are, you attract those people to come in, right? And so now, like, I'm here on your live, right? And I've met so many amazing people, but it took me jumping in first with my own conviction to make that like stance before attracting those people to come in. Because when you want to become an influencer or start a business, or essentially what you're doing is you're claiming to be a master or an expert in a new field, people are looking for your authority, right? Like like it would have never worked out if I was like, hey everyone, I need you to accept me before I
Yeah.
accepted myself, you know?
Yeah, I love that you said that. You have to be your number one cheerleader because it's so easy to self sabotage. How do
Yeah.
you know when you are kind of putting the brakes on your future, or how do you know when you are self sabotaging? Is there a certain voice that you have to listen to that you've noticed, or a tip that you would give someone to prevent that self sabotaging? Or, like you had mentioned earlier, not having to be perfect, just contributing to your brand daily.
Yeah, so a couple of things. So one, I think having an idea of what it is that you want to become, like having a vision, I call it vision work. Having a vision is so important when you're stepping into any new venture. And even if it's scary, even if you have trouble finding the self-worth in you to feel like you really deserve that. Because I think a lot of people, when you come from an old identity or you're coming from an old place, right?
Yeah,
Old behaviors, you don't really, you're coming from a different operating system, within.
yeah,
And so having that vision work, like, so if you, let's just say you want to be a different type of entrepreneur, you want to start a new venture of some sort, then you have to have an idea, like, okay, so if that was me today, like what would I be doing? How would my day look like? How would I wake up? What would my habits be? um what does self-care look like
yeah,
on that level, right?
yeah,
And so I think when you have a good idea of what that looks like, write it down, like, really picture that, master that, feel that. And then as you start taking action in your day to day, whether it be like you get invited to go to a happy hour, or maybe you get invited to go to do like a collaboration with a podcast or something, ask yourself, does this contribute to where I'm heading? And if you find yourself like, maybe, a lot of people are like, well, I was, on this health journey, and then I went to a happy hour and I kind of blew it all, and I like had too many drinks and I ate too much. Whatever that looks like for you, right? Sabotage can come in so many different ways. But sabotage, the inception of sabotage comes from an emotional reaction. So
yeah,
something in you is like, I don't I don't feel safe in this environment. And so going back to a negative habit actually feels safer than doing the unknown thing, even if it's good. Here's the
wow,
thing, sabotage can happen when people win the lottery. A lot of people sabotage when they win the lottery.
yeah,
A lot of people sabotage when they get a promotion. That's why sometimes when something really good happens to you, you have this little voice inside you that's like, well, what if it gets taken away?
yeah,
Or what if something bad happens to me? Or it's like you can't fully enjoy what you're receiving because enjoyment on that level feels scarier than going back to like bashing yourself, negative self-talk, getting into emotional habits. And so what happens is it's emotionally creating a reaction in you,
wow,
and we all emotionally act, right? A lot of our decision making is run from our emotions. So that's why I love to do vision work, because if you can connect with your future self, this idea of your future self, and you are very emotionally connected to that, you know how you're going to feel, you know how you can prepare yourself for that level of you, you're going to choose that version, and
yeah,
you're not going to choose the other version. And I will say, being in the messy middle, in
right,
that place of like kind of teetering back and forth between old identity, is very normal. And if you do sabotage, like, don't beat yourself up over it. Like, this
yeah.
stuff is a process.
I love that so much. And it goes back to receiving and that self love.
Yeah, totally, totally. And it goes back to like just remembering who you want to become, because I'll never forget, like, a mentor told me this. It's like, we're not what we do sometimes, we are what we do every day. And so if you're sabotaging every day, you're never going to get to that level, because you're choosing an old version of you. You're choosing to be emotionally comfortable with habits that are not good for you, but you stick around because you're scared of becoming someone else.
Oh my gosh, I love that. You are just dropping so many gems. You're on fire. And it's so true, though, fighting that fear and just taking that self confidence, believing in yourself, and really investing in yourself. What are some things that you do to keep yourself centered and organized because you do have such a busy schedule?
Yeah, I think again, kind of going back to earlier, like I feel like I've mastered the art of change. And so I have learned to not try to make things stable in my life. I like that to me is an illusion, and it keeps me continuously unhappy. If I base my happiness around how stable my environment is in a world where I'm constantly evolving, well, I'm never going to have that inside, right? And so it's funny, someone asked me yesterday, they were like, what do you think about morning routines? And I'm like, I think morning routines are extremely limiting. And I'll be honest with you, it's because we are all different. We all have different times in which we express creativity. We all have different times in which we feel better working out, right? Like we have to tune into our bodies and really ask ourselves, like, okay, like for me, I'm extremely creative at 8 in the morning. This is why we're having this conversation right now,
Wow.
right? This is where I'm like the most inspirational. So waking up at 5 in the morning would be a disservice to me, right? So basically what I'm saying is I think when you have insane forms of discipline, it could be limiting to your overall potential. And so how I ground myself
Mhm.
is I tend to focus on like how do like I like to think of like a baseline for myself. So for instance, I feel incredibly centered when I take time in the morning to be creative, usually from 8 to noon. I do something for my body every single day no matter what. Could be at, 5 a.m., could be at 7 p.m. Doesn't matter for me, but I got to do something for myself. And I am pushing my life towards my bigger vision. And if those three things happen at some point every day, I feel incredibly grounded. So it's not in like, let me hold on to dear life to my 5 a.m. routine. It's more so like, how do I feel at peace with myself? And I think if you could define that, if everyone has their own version of that, you don't need these incredibly structured routines, you
I
know?
love that so much. Yeah, just really listening to your body, listening to your spirit. At the end of the day, accomplishing the things that you want to do. It doesn't have to be the norm. You decide your own norm.
Totally. You decide your own norm. And some of the best creators in the world and some of the most, I don't want to use the word successful, but like to the public eye successful,
Right.
like they have their own versions of that. And I think the reason why some of these books came out, like the 4 Hour Work Week or the morning routine, is because that those actually worked
Right.
for those people, right? So it's like it doesn't mean they're bad. It just depends on how you operate as a
Yeah.
person.
I love that. Who inspires you?
Who inspires me? I love people who are authentically themselves. So, like, where, like, no matter what they are, who they are at any given time of the day. I don't have like any celebrities in mind that I think of, but to me, it's like if you are authentically you and you have created a life from being that and you've honored that, like, my hat's off to you.
Woohoo. I love that. Yeah, and it's so hard to be authentic, especially with society and trying to fit into what society expects you to be and creating a business. Also, there's a lot of pressure that, like you kind of mentioned earlier, people don't have that patience and they want to make millions overnight. They want to be social media influencers overnight. And so they tend to give into what society likes. And so it's very challenging to be authentic for a lot of people because that is something that some people had mentioned when I had posted our interview that we were going to have this conversation. How do you stay authentic? How do you stay on your brand? How do you stay on that path? How are you okay with taking that shift into other business adventures? Because that's scary for a lot of people.
Yeah, I heard this and it completely changed my perspective. And it came from James Wedmore, actually. I love crediting creators for teaching me amazing things. But
I love it.
um, in a world where we glorify money and vanity and influence, right? Because that's what we do. We're human and we need to acknowledge that. when you are creating, when you're an entrepreneur and you're creating things, you look for those things because as an audience, we admire those things, right? It's just
Right.
it's normal. It's not a bad thing. But when you're behind the curtains creating a business and you look for those things first, you're actually looking for the wrong thing. So money and influence actually is an output, it's the result of someone being authentic and someone providing value. And so when we look at those things, and we chase those things, it's actually like it's kind of like an empty hole, and it cycles within itself, right? Because we're kind of missing a step there. Like, it's fine if you want those things. I mean, again, there's no shame to that. But in the inception of what you're creating, those people typically were authentically themselves or provided a service that has incredible value. And because of those reasons, they received the money and the vanity and all the other things that we glorify. And so I like to talk about like being your authentic self because it's the part that is the most uncomfortable.
Right.
And like I love to give this example, but it's like when people are like, well, using your intuition is silly in business, and I'm like, well, I don't know, like I think people have a misconception of what that word means, because to me your intuition is just simply going back to your truth, and that comes in many formats, right? So that could be when no one believes in you, you went back to your truth and you trusted yourself.
I love that.
And some of the best entrepreneurs in the world
Yeah.
rely on those things. So like for example, look at Elon Musk, who was in a very innovative space for many years, right? The whole electric car thing and the spaceships, and I mean, he really thinks outside of the box. And if he looked for external validation for anything he created, there's absolutely no chance that that man would be where he was today.
Yeah.
And anyone who does like very, very big things, they at some point have isolated themselves, and not because they wanted to, but it was because the noise of the outside world was not in alignment with where they were heading. And they had to put the vision and they had to pioneer the product or the service or the value that they brought into the world for many years without the instant gratification of validation, right? And then because they did those things, now they have the money and now they have the influence. So it comes from within.
Yeah, I love that so much. And you just have to follow that journey, have that patience, and like you said, have a different focus instead of focusing on the material stuff, focusing on making a contribution to society, thinking outside the box, and creating that domino effect. So it does make a difference in the world and with other people.
Yeah, and again, unsexy, very not sexy reasoning behind that, but people are like, well, okay, well then how do I learn how to trust myself? How do I learn how to listen to myself? And it comes from releasing all of the reasons as to why you don't feel safe being you. And
Okay.
that comes from, again, not the fun side of this world, but like comes from trauma or limiting beliefs or, the woundings that you have in relationships. And there's a reason as to why you look for those things outside of yourself. And why, you want to have that acceptance from other people rather than you. And so when you look at a lot of, again, we could go back to Elon, like, Elon he's a pretty eclectic, like weird dude, right? And I'm sure he was shamed for that for
Yeah.
many, many years. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs have some form of trauma and have gone through some form of shame that has kind of pushed them into this path of doing things by themselves, right?
Yeah.
But just because you've made it that far, it doesn't mean that there's more to unpack. And I think it doesn't have to be a scary thing. I think if you look at it as an invitation to your highest potential,
Oh, I love
and yeah, it's really just an invitation to explore things, because it's you holding on to things that you're subconsciously not even aware of, but
it. Yeah.
unfortunately it shows up in the sneakiest of ways. and it's showing up in ways that are doing you a complete disservice.
Wow. Yeah, that's so interesting how that is too. And conquering that fear, conquering the unknown, once you cross that line and cross that path, there's even more amazing things that are ahead for you that you have to just persevere through that and turn your challenges into positive things.
Yeah, and I think that's why like it's so good to do this in a group format.
Mhm.
Another thing I learned again from like an amazing mentor is like our woundings never happened by ourselves. Like they never happened alone. It's not like you taught yourself, like poor self-love like that
Right,
came from relationships with other people, whether it be like romantic or parental figures, like whatever that looks like.
right.
And so when we look to transform ourselves and heal in those places, we need to do that in the presence of other people, because we cannot heal a an emotional wound without going back into that emotional environment and being in that same level of discomfort, but recreating the experience, right? That's
Right.
really where it comes from. And it's also the most satisfying when you can experience that around other people that make you feel incredibly safe.
Having that support system is so huge, and having that team around you, whether it's professional or also just in your private life, it's important to have people that help you grow and help you move through stuff.
Totally. Yeah.
Did you find any challenges that you came across over the years and changing into different businesses? What was your biggest challenge?
Um, I think the biggest challenge I really, and again, like could be a boring answer, but I really think the biggest challenge is you, because you're just so afraid of like what other people think, and starting over and getting new clients, and it's honestly it's kind of an ego trip, because you have built this like incredible muscle on one side of your body, and now you have to go to something that has no muscle, right? And sometimes there are not skills that transfer. Like I'll give you a great example. My first business was a faceless business, and we raised capital and we did a lot of things without ever really focusing on either of the founders. It was a business that ran on data and numbers.
Okay.
And it's so funny because that's so not who I am at my core, right? Like I have a background in project management, and so I am an amazing operational person. I can put teams together and discipline and SOPs. Like I'm an SOP queen. So when it comes to like actually building, scaling, hiring, delegating, all those things I've really mastered in terms of like the tactics of it, right?
Right.
And then jumping into this spiritual business that I have right now, or a mindset business, or more coaching, it's so dependent on people and my connection with people, which by the way comes very naturally to me. I mean, you and I are strangers and we're having this conversation,
Right.
but it was a very different muscle for me to exercise in a format where I'm supposed to be monetizing it, right? And so like that transference of knowledge you
Wow.
would think would be easy, but I think putting it on paper and putting it in front of people just felt very different. And so I think yes, like the two businesses that I have today and the one that I'm still a partner of,
Right.
they could not be any more different. And how
Wow.
they grab people and how the customer journey is, I mean, quite literally polar opposites.
Wow. What tip would you give someone to get more clients for their business?
What tip would I give someone to give more clients for their business? I think people overcomplicate funnels and exposure. I mean, right now there's just so many things, right? You can do lives, you can do podcasts, you could do
Right.
marketing, you could do paid ads. There's just so much going on everywhere. And I just watched an interview actually with Alex Hermosi, and
Uh-huh.
he talks about how when he was growing his social media, he went to like a really big YouTube conference. It was like a mastermind with like some of the best YouTube creators in the world.
Oh, wow.
And at that time he was kind of spreading himself thin. So he was like on Instagram, on the podcast, doing all this stuff.
Right.
And he went to this mastermind and he spoke to someone who would get like 15 million views on a video on YouTube. And he was like, "So what do you do to prepare?" And the guy was like, "Well, it takes me 30 days to prepare one video."
Wow.
And he was like, "Well, Alex, what do you do?" And Alex was like, "Well, I just hope for the best and show up, right?" And so I think it's like the whole point of me sharing the story is like I do believe that there is a reason why people talk about perfecting a funnel and one funnel. And a funnel can mean very different things, right? It can mean mastering a podcast or mastering your Instagram or
Right.
mastering ads, right? And so, in my other business, we mastered the art of ads, and
Mm,
we were never on social, and we were never anywhere else. We were just
right.
doing ads. And so I think it's really understanding like where does your like just cut the noise of like what everyone's doing and all these like webinars on all the stuff, because there's a lot of stuff out there. It's really overwhelming. And if you were to have a cup of coffee with your ideal customer, where do those people live? Where are they shopping? And also, like, where subconsciously are you meeting your customer? So, like, for example, I'm in the coaching space right now.
Right.
And it's not like people are on Instagram thinking about, wow, how do I heal my traumas? And how do I work with someone to release my trauma? Like no one's thinking that way. But people are scrolling, and I'm catching people and I'm educating people while they're scrolling, right? And it's the same way. It's like if you're where subconsciously do your customers shop, where do they learn, and where can you meet them? It's not
Oh,
where can you chase them, because I don't believe in that. It's where are you in perfect alignment with these people, and master that. Like, don't spread yourself thin. If you're growing your business and you already have a funnel that works and you're testing other things, that's a little different.
yeah.
Um, and there is some trial and error with that. But I think if you're
Right.
just starting, like, really double down, like, try things. And if you find something that's sticking, don't just leave it out there because someone told you that there's a better thing that exists. Like, I'd say really master whatever it is that you're doing.
I love it. Oh my gosh, I could talk to you all day. You're dropping so many gems. It has been so much fun. Was there anything else that you wanted to share with the viewers?
Um, Trying to think. No, I mean, I love talking about this stuff. This is like my
Yes.
jam. So if you guys want more, feel free to like add me on Instagram, DM me. I love making podcast content and just content in general about this, but I never know like how deep people want me to go. So
Right.
yeah, reach out to me. I'm
I
friendly. I
love
don't bite.
it. I love it so much. Do you have anything coming up? Any projects or anything?
I do. I have a program that I'm launching called The Intuitive CEO, and I help entrepreneurs start or scale their businesses. So, if you are brand new to the space, you have a product, you are trying to build a funnel, and or maybe you're already scaling your business and you're looking into going into hyper growth, but you don't want to sacrifice your well-being, and you're looking to grow your business while still prioritizing other things in your life, and you want to go through a deeply transformational and spiritual journey. I'm launching a program on November 11th, so 11/11, and you can, yeah, you just find me on sabrinaguler.com, and you can apply there.
Nice. I love it. So excited. I'm so excited to follow your journey and just see everything that comes up for you. What is it that you want to be remembered for?
I would love to be remembered for inspiring people and for them taking something that I've shared on my own path and helping them propel forward.
Oh my gosh, I love it so much. It has been such a pleasure and such an honor to have you. And we will definitely have to keep in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank
guys.
you so much. It has been such a pleasure. Thank you guys for tuning in and watching Jacqueline Valdez Live, illuminating the world one voice at a time. Thank you guys. Take care. Thank you.